Hey guys, thanks for hanging in there with us. You're listening to K-Talk. That's AM 630. Follow us on Facebook at K-Talk Media. Follow us on Twitter at KTKK K-Talk. And of course, this is PrepperCon Radio. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on our favorite app, Prepped. You can download that at the Play Store and also at the App Store for Apple. So we're having a lot of fun in the world of preparedness. We're trying to get everybody as prepared as possible and open up dialogues. And we've got an amazing guest, Jon with Survival Medical. He's the founder, and this is his brainchild. They do long-term medical kits. They've cracked the code on the long-term storage. Most of the things you put in there expire quickly, alcohol pads, burn gels, and those things. A lot of them have quick expiration dates. Even the adhesive in your bandages go bad quickly. But these have a 20-year shelf life on these that when you need them, you rip it open, boom, there you go, and you've got your kit. So thanks for being with us today. Thanks for being on there and willing to go through the madness. For those listening, our phone call capability, we cannot take any calls because our phone system in studio is broken. So unfortunately, we can't take any calls, but hit us up on our Twitter feed or on our Facebook page, and we'll try to answer those questions as we go. So we were talking about social unrest, kind of the challenges with that. The biggest challenge, I think, is more or less your neighbors who you're going to want to have compassion for them and empathy for them and understand where they're coming from. But when people hit their breaking point, you don't know exactly what they're going to do. I'd like to say that I'm prepared enough to be able to handle those type of situations, but honestly, that's not true. None of us really are. We're going to be faced with a lot of weird, scary, and ethically challenging situations, no matter what type of disaster comes our way. So what are you preparing for? What should we be preparing for? But also, what can we do right now to improve the situation? During the break, Jon brought up a good point. Let's talk about liberty. Let's talk about freedom. Those are the things we need to be fighting for, absolutely being loud about. Talking to the politicians and getting them out of office if they're not doing the right thing. Jon, what did you have in mind when you brought up that topic?
Well, I think that's a big part of preparedness. If I'm not prepared, I have no choice but to be a slave. And so the point is if I want to have independence, which is part of freedom, then I need to be prepared. I need to have my family prepared. So if I'm prepared, then I have options and I have choices. If I'm not prepared, then I don't have those choices and options. And I think that it'll take a level of preparedness to be able to retain your freedom and your liberties for what's coming. Because all of this, Scott, as we know, and I'm sure as your listeners here know, this is all by design. Nothing here is a mistake. This is by design. And there is ill intent by design that's creating this. And our defense against it, obviously, is preparation, whether that's physical preparation or spiritual and mental preparation. All of those things go into it. But without the physical part, which is what we're talking about, we will not have the ability to be free men. And ultimately, that's really my inspiration, and I think yours, and probably a lot of your listeners here. I think that's a lot of it. If you want to be a free man, you're going to be prepared.
Absolutely, and it looks different to everybody. But I think the biggest thing is having the ability to decide for yourself and your family what you do and don't want to do, how you want to live. There's a lot of groups now, like Florida pisses me off. They've now made it illegal to camp on your own land for more than, I think it's 3 nights. So people who were living in like a yurt or a dome or just a tent while they build a permanent structure are now being fined or jailed. It's ridiculous. You can't just straight up homestead on your land and build a shack. And for a lot of people down there, that's been the way of life for generations. And local politicians are like, no, we don't want that anymore. And so they unilaterally make those decisions for people. Liberty is taking back the ability to make those decisions.
The important thing to remember there, too, Scott, you bring up a perfect point, is they have no legal right to pass that law. There is no precedent to allow for such a thing to happen. The whole basis of a constitutional republic and why our founders got together on July 1st and declared independence was to preserve and protect men's natural rights. Government does not grant rights. Government is supposed to protect our rights, but they don't. That's what's changed. It's what's turned. They've turned in to the opposite of that. They are ripping away natural rights. They have no right to take that. It's not there. And justice needs to be served when men take what is another man's. And when you take another man's right to his property, his right to protect his family, you're no longer a government. You're now a tyrant.
Absolutely.
And people need to be aware of that. I think that's a big part of how we've got here is the education system. We have, by design, taken away the education. How many people, I wonder, understand what a natural right is? What does sovereignty mean? What is a constitutional republic? It would be a staggeringly sad number to realize how many of your neighbors can't answer those questions.
Well, it's funny. Challenger Schools here is a local school system here. It's not a public. Well, it's a public school, but it's a. I'm totally losing the words here. It's a charter school. Thank you. And it's funny because their commercials, they go around, they're asking, well, what kind of country is this? You know, what kind of government do we have? And everyone's like, nobody can seem to answer the question. What kind of, what is this country based on? And they're like, oh, it's a democracy. And well, now if you watch it, this isn't the commercial, but they're like, it's turning into a communist regime. It's a tyranny, but it's a republic. We pledge allegiance to the Republic of the United States of America. We're not pledging allegiance to the government. We're pledging allegiance to the people. The Republic is the people. We need to, as a people, keep and hold our rights. I've actually put it on myself to start studying the Constitution more. I think a lot of people, once we graze over that in 5th grade, we tend to forget about it until 10th grade and then ignore it after that. I would say that's true for the majority. And we need to fix that. We need people to understand what their rights are. Their natural rights. For example, the First and Second Amendments are my favorite too. Free speech, which everyone's fallen all over themselves to freak out about politically incorrectness and no longer allowing people free speech. And then the right to keep and bear arms. And everyone's freaking out about that one right now because of the shootings in Orlando, because of, if you want to go all the way back to the different schools, to the Arapahoe shooting, people are freaking out because they're not being responsible. They're not teaching responsibility. And they're trying to force government to make decisions for them because they don't want to be responsible, I guess. But at the end of the day, they are absolutely 100% responsible for allowing government to make those decisions without them. So if they're worried about the consequences are their own fault. So if they lose those rights because the government took them away because you weren't willing to stand up for them, that's your own fault. What we need is more people to stand up and say, hey, that's not right. Let's fix this. Now, John, you're probably one of those. Go ahead. I think that's where the preparedness comes in, Scott, right? Is we know what's coming. They love to create problems so that they can come in and get solutions. All of your listeners, I'm sure, here on K-Talk, I love this station. I can't even tell you how much I love the station and what they do for liberty there in Utah. Your listeners are educated. They know. This is by design. They want you to surrender your freedoms out of desperation. Absolutely.
And the only way to fight that is through preparedness. The only way to fight that is through independent self-sufficiency. Without it, we will be forced to our knees. You won't have a choice because that'll be your only option to feed your family. Good men will do bad things because they love their families. And the only option there is to be prepared. And I think that's the biggest why as we talk about this today. It takes that because we know this is by design. We know this is by design. We know what's coming. And we need to start waking up in a serious way. We need to wake up to the awful situation that we are in. We live in tyranny, and if we haven't accepted that as the fact, our heads in the sand. Look around you. This is not a nation of free men. This is not a nation of property rights. This is not a nation where you can vocalize your opposition and your thoughts and have a discussion. It is edited. It is edited to the point of imprisonment and enslavement. When free men stand up to express an opinion about property rights, some of them are gunned down on the side of the road, and the rest are locked away in cages while their families don't have fathers. This is not the nation that our fathers grew up in, Scott, and we need to wake up and wake our neighbors up to that fact. But the more of us that are prepared, the more we can endure and be together as a community to survive what's coming.
And the irony is that the K-Talk listener family, they're awake. You guys listening to this broadcast, you're the people who are doing the right thing. You're awake. You're being active. You're being responsible. It's the rest of the country. It's the rest of the world that's sleeping. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people that are preppers that are awake. I'm gonna lump them into the K-Talk listener group because I'm sure if they knew about the station, they'd be listening to the station. But we're one of the last independent voices available. Most of the stations you're going to run across out there are basically singing the same song. They all have bullet points of what they're allowed to talk about. But we actually go the step farther, and our ownership here is so awesome. They let us talk about what's really happening. They let us talk about the actual important issues and try to fix it as a community. And so we don't sugarcoat anything. We have a lot of different opinions. We talk about it. We push things. We just have fun with it. The most important thing, though, is to wake the crap up and start doing something. So many people didn't vote this last week in the primaries for our governors. You know, you don't have a say now based on what you didn't do. You don't have a say going forward unless you start taking action. You need to get involved. You need to be self-reliant. You know, I look at what's going on with the EU right now. Germany's posturing and saying, nope, sorry, the UK, you're not getting out of this. All the UK did so far was vote. They said, yeah, we want out. And now everyone else scrambling to keep them in and to force them in. Before the vote, and John, you're probably aware of this, our shameful POTUS, Barack Obama, went out there and pulled the full tyranny card. And he's like, if you guys vote for this, we're going to sanction so many embargoes against you. We're going to come after you. Are you freaking kidding me? And so what do the UK do? They're like, F you, President, we're out. We don't care what you say or do. We're out. And that's just a glimpse of the tyranny that our government here in the United States is forcing, not just on us, but on the world. We're running into a break again. We're going to be back after a few messages from our sponsors. You're listening to K-Talk Radio. This is PrepperCon Radio. Shane's out of the studio today, so wish him well in his travels. We've got Jon on the phone with Survival Medical, and we're going to be right back after a couple words from our sponsors.
Whether you're injured at the...
Oh, man, this is awesome. So now we've got Kristen in studio helping try to fix the phone problem, and she's climbing under the desk, pulling wires, and probably pulling her hair out. Thank you so much for helping out. Jon,
a lot of hair.
She does have a lot of hair. And we got Jon on my cell phone leaning against a mic stand. Actually, he's leaning against the phone up against a mic stand. So we apologize. The quality's not what you'd normally expect from K-Talk, but hey, the purpose, the meaning, and the desire, we still got it. Our passion is here to talk and have fun and to inform. Jon, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, despite all the difficulties.
Oh, absolutely. So we're talking about what can we do, how can we be better prepared, how can we be more involved, and we're just giving a huge shout out to the K-Talk family. You guys are always involved. I've seen times where we've needed people to go up to the state building, the Capitol, and make their presence known and let our politicians know what we need, and you guys have done it time and time again, so thank you. If you've got someone that you love in your life that's not doing things like you're doing them, that's not getting people prepared, that maybe isn't prepared themselves, get them listening to K-Talk. Get them streaming it from their app. If they're in the office, we've got the app, the K-Talk app. It's in the Play Store. It's on in the App Store. If you go to K-Talk, that's ktalk.com, you can actually download the app directly from there, or they can stream it from there. You can also check out our archives. We've got a lot of great shows here. We've got Disrupt Up Radio. We've got the Liberty Lineup, which is one of my favorites. And then my absolute all-time favorite is PrepperCon Radio, which you're listening to now, and I'm a little biased, so I'm just going to put it out there. We bring in experts like Jon, people who are true preppers, true survivalists, true bushcrafters who know the skills, know the drills, and they live it. I've had the opportunity to spend some time with Jon up in Idaho at a guest ranch. And we were palling around, and he was showing me some of the skills he's got. He was gathering tree sap. It actually wasn't just, it was the hard sap. You were gathering that so you could actually make glue with it. Do I remember that right?
Absolutely. There's a million things you can do with pitch.
Pitch, that's what I'm looking for.
It's a great antibacterial. It's a great way to close wounds. It's a great way if you need to boost your immune system. The vitamins in there are great. A lot of people are familiar with the pine needle tea, but they overlook a lot of the different evergreens pitch. But yeah, mix it with a little bit of wood ash, and you've got a great glue. It's also a waterproofer you can use for your boots and your clothing. There's a lot of different uses there. And it's I think a lot of those skills are lost because we're so disconnected from the land. So another conversation I was having with the same individual yesterday when we talked about the Salt Lake would look like New York City when it fell apart. And I think one of the demographics you have to look at is not only population centers, but also how many generations is that population center? How many generations are they from the land? And that varies region by region. Utah, surprisingly, is not as prepared as a lot of us would assume that it is. And I personally am of the belief that that's because it's fairly there's a lot of generations there in comparison to, say, the South, away from the land.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm incorrect there, but I think that's part of it. Is the first few generations of settlers in the place struggled, and then it became this fertile, blossoming desert. And a lot of folks, I think, in that region are farther away from less self-sustaining generation. Whereas where I'm from in the South, there's most people, at least it's their grandparents, that they remember, that had a milk cow and raised a garden and had a cellar. And so self-sufficiency is not that far away generationally. And I think the farther we get away from that generational gap, the more dangerous a society becomes too, because they don't understand where food comes from. And I know that might sound like a silly statement, but when you have not personally seen that food be grown and harvested and stored, your perception is that food comes from a grocery store. Therefore, if the grocery store is shut down, there's no food.
Yep.
And that's dangerous.
Absolutely dangerous. It's interesting. I was actually having a similar conversation just yesterday with their local scoutmaster, and he's raising some chickens, and he's been raising chickens for years, but he's never processed one. He takes the eggs, but then when they're closer to the end of their lifespan, he just gives them to someone else that's going to take care of them and process them and do whatever they want with them. But he's never processed a chicken, and he's had these chickens for probably 15, 20 years that he's cycled through. And I was just like, are you kidding me? And we started talking about the amazing blessing it is to process your own food from beginning to end, to raise the chicken, to harvest the eggs, and then at some point to process the chicken. For those that don't understand, slaughter the chicken, clean it, and then use the meat and use anything you can pull from it for your own sustenance. And so I talked to him about the process. I went and, for the first time, I did this last year, a little over a year ago now. And, man, it was a truly humbling experience. The depth of gratitude that I felt, number one, first and foremost, for that chicken was huge. And I did the same thing with a rabbit a few weeks later to learn and understand myself what it's like. My dad has stories growing up where his grandpa was taking care of the chickens, and they'd sit there and watch him. And then eventually they got to learn how to do it. But they were there when they were 4 years old watching Grandpa, process all the chickens for dinner. And we are so disconnected from that on a day-to-day basis because everything has gotten so easy. And I think one of the things that drives that is people, especially parents, we want our kids to have everything we didn't have. But what we need to focus on is helping them get all the knowledge we wish we had. Because knowledge can win out. If you teach them how to take care of things, they're going to take care of it. If you teach them how to be self-reliant, they'll be self-reliant. If we give them the things that they need, they're going to always be dependent on you, if that's all you ever do. And John's absolutely right. We need to break away from this completely segregated life that we live, segregated away from nature, segregated away from the earth. We need to start growing our own foods again. We need to start getting self-reliant, not relying on everyone else to take care of our stuff for us. Know how to fix the common things in your house that break. I think a lot of us just, hey, something's not working, call around and find a handyman or use all the different websites. Hey, where's the best person to do this job? If you just spend a few minutes on YouTube, for example, you could find how to fix something. Find how to replace a water filter in your fridge. Find how to fix the dryer or the washer. And there's so many simple, easy things you could learn to do, but people just don't take the time to do it and don't take the time to return to those skill sets and that way of living. So that when we are forced to return to that, they're all up crap creek.
I think that's fear that holds them there, Scott. We're all creatures of habit, and to do something different that we don't know or to admit we don't know it is a fearful thing for most of us. As you were talking, I was reminded of some people I grew up around. Growing up in the Ozarks, it was a place where a lot of people came when the Back to the Land movement really started there in the 80s. And I can specifically remember a couple that bought a little plot down the road from our farm. And they were a couple from Chicago. He was a computer software designer, and they had like 6 kids. And they both were born and raised in Chicago suburbs. And they had done enough reading about what was coming and looking at where society was going. And they said, you know what? We are dropping out. And these guys bought, I think it was like 8 acres in the Ozarks, and took their family there, cashed everything out, and had none of these skills. And they were so brave that they just went and said, you know what, we can learn it. And I can remember going over there as a young teenager and helping clean a bunch of chickens, as you were saying. And they actually turned that into a business. They built a couple chicken plucker machines and put them on a flatbed trailer, and would go around to other homesteaders and do the chicken plucking for $1 a chicken. And it was part of how they ended up making a living.
That's awesome.
And to me, they were a perfect example as a young kid of seeing people be brave enough to recognize the storm that was coming and face the fears and admit, I don't know, but I can learn, and it's important enough for my family that I'm going to go and do it. And heck, they built their own house. They hacked it. They hacked it out of the Ozark woods and rocks.
That is awesome.
And to me, it was a huge testament to see that anyone could do this. So I love that I have the opportunity to grow up in that region, because I grew up seeing so many folks with a very similar story that saw what society was doing and said, no, we're done, and we're moving to the Ozarks, and we're homeschooling our kids, and we're raising a garden. And Scott, it's good that you had somebody else teach you how to clean those chickens, because I like to have fun. And I was teaching somebody how to do this a few years ago, and of course I had the fryer going as we were cleaning, because I love fresh gizzards and fresh hearts.
Oh yeah.
And so we were cleaning these chickens and throwing the bread and the gizzards and throwing them as we came across. And my buddy, I was showing how to do it. He didn't quite know the difference between the gizzard and the what we call the craw. I don't know what the technical term for it is, but it's the part of the chicken that catches all the dirt and gravel. And I had to have fun. We fried up a craw for him and let him bite into it.
Oh, yeah.
So be glad I wasn't the guy showing you how to clean that chicken.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been very happy with that if you'd done that to me. I I think it's funny. We need to have that return, and it gives us gratitude. It also gives us a sense of accomplishment. I think real liberty, what we're all forgetting, what real freedom is the ability to live the way you desire to, the way we were meant to. You know, I like to consider myself a very religious person. I look in the Old Testament, and what God said to Adam when He had him depart from the Garden of Eden. The best commandment, by the sweat of thy brow shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Freedom is the ability to work for what you get, the ability to do things yourself. The sense of pride by accomplishing those things is huge. You know, even though you suckered your buddy and made him eat the gravel pit of the chicken, that's awesome. You know, I'm sure he really appreciated the knowledge that he got from the rest of the process. You know, way too many of us.
And you know, when you said that there, I just want to say the other side of the story. You said, you know, that is one of the greatest commandments and the greatest gift we were given. On the other side of that, Scott, is the tyrannical side. And it's one of the most evil things that government could do is to take away a man's right to work his property as he sees fit. Mm-hmm. And we are absolutely waging a war right now with that. It is a war because there are prisoners of war and there are victims of a tyrannical government being gunned down. And I hope that your listeners there in Utah realize, especially in a place like Utah, where 93% of Utah lands are illegally owned by a federal government.
Yep.
And I know you've got a brave group of leadership there going after that headline, but I hope people really realize the roots of that debate. And the roots of that debate is that exact commandment that you just quoted there. Without the right to work the land, we're slaves.
Absolutely.
And our divine purpose of being here is taken from us. And if that's not a right to stand up and protect, I don't know what is.
You know, I think you brought up a good point. There's so many people whose rights have been taken away who are imprisoned illegally because they were just living. They didn't do anything wrong. They were living, and the federal government swooped in and started taking. I want to put those names out there. We also talked about someone who's gunned down. Specifically, Lavoy Finicum was murdered. You know, I have great admiration for him and his family. We're actually helping with our fundraiser coming up here July 30th. It's going to be at the Boy Scouts of America. It's going to be all about the Constitution. You can get your tickets online. I believe they're $20 at the door, $15 if you buy them online. Great event. I'm really looking forward to it. I'll be there. K-Talk's going to be covering the event, but it's July 30th. Get involved. Get on there. You can find it on our Facebook page. Lavoy Finicum was murdered. And then I look at the Bundys. And everyone's polarized about the Bundys. And I don't understand why until I start thinking about what people are actually educated on. And they've been imprisoned because of the Oregon standoff and because the BLM wants their land to sell all the mineral rights and to take and strip that land of its natural resources. Absolutely shameful that this is happening and that people aren't doing anything about it.
Well, there are a lot of good people doing a lot about it, but there can definitely be more. And where I think the biggest thing to realize there is we just need to educate people.
Yeah.
People need to understand, and it's a heck of a fight. And there's plenty of people in the political arena that says, education is a terrible way to go about political change. I just don't happen to know any other. But I think don't understand because we've been raised multi-generationally now with this Marxist idea of, it takes a village and the common good of all. Well, all is made up of the one. And without that one having the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, there is no greater good for all. And, I actually just finished reading the boy's book again last night. And what an incredible man. And what he's shared with all of us is inspirational. And I hope that everyone will pick up that book as we talk about why we need to prepare. I think some of the best eye-openers and the best tools we have in that education of our neighbors is some of the great books that have been written by men like James Wesley Rawls, Bruce Buckshot Hemming, and at the very top of that list, I have to say for me, is Only by Blood and Suffering by LeBoy Finnegan. What an incredible book, so simply and beautifully expressed how special these natural rights are and how special and divinely given our liberties are. And by their sacred nature, good men should protect them. That's our call. When we're given something, we're also given responsibility. And we've been given a land of liberty. It's our duty to protect those liberties. And again, to me, that all ties back into preparedness. I can't face the hard times ahead and rise to the challenges that my neighbors and my community and my country are going to need if I don't have things in place for my family to be taken care of. Because the ease of life that we've all grown up in is fading, and it's fading fast. And there's so many generations now that are off the land that don't know how to do those simple things, and it's that fear that drives that bad part of human nature that does those things like we talked about in the first segment. And it's just fear. If they knew how simple it was to raise some food, it wouldn't be such a scary thing for them. But they're so far away from it, especially when you think about all of the groups that have been raised in an urban environment for generations for people.
I got to cut you off, unfortunately. We're out of time. Thank you so much for being part of the show today. We appreciate you and all you're doing with Survival Medical and all you're doing for our Constitution. Thank you so much.